So our first panelist, Ms. Divisha Mohan, is a researcher and has completed her bachelor's in history honors from Lady Shri Ram College, Delhi in 2019. She pursued her master's in Irish history from Dublin City University in 2020, and her dissertation was The Dominance of the Teapot, a survey of Indo-Irish trade relations between 1930.
Our second panelist is John K. Chandy. He's an entrepreneur and he's working and living in Ireland since last number of years.
Mr. John K. Chandy is the CEO of MS Hepta Quantino Inc., that is a student recruiting firm based in New Delhi, India. The firm is recruiting students exclusively to universities, institutes of technology, and colleges in Ireland. Mr. Chandy is a science graduate in first division from the University of Kerala in India. He has served as a captain in the Indian Army. We welcome you, Mr. John K. Chandy.
Thank you. You are very welcome, John, for this panel discussion. Now, our third guest, he's not guest, basically, he's a host. Damien Nee is a co-chair of Ireland-India Council. So please welcome Damien Nee.
Mr. Damien Nee is a committed environmentalist, is a founding director of EcoED for All, a founder of organdonation.ie. He believes that Ireland and India can forge the kind of relationship that US and Ireland have, leading to democratic alliance. He is a great lover of India and has visited India. He is currently a co-chair of Ireland-India Council.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Mr. C.M. Patel, advocate from India.
Mr. C.M. Patel is an advocate in High Court and Supreme Court of India based in Delhi. He has contested election to seek his membership in State Legislative Assembly. He is a friend of Ireland and has visited here in the past.
Thank you. Now, finally, we have Mr. Jerry Henley. He has a lot of work in heritage and culture. Please welcome Jerry Henley.
Mr. Jerry Hanley studied civil engineering at NUI Galway. Following a career in that field, he immersed himself in heritage and culture, which he uses to connect communities. He is a former chair of both Galway Civic Trust and NUI Galway Alumni Board. We welcome you, Mr. Jerry Hanley.
You're very welcome, Jerry, here. And I can tell actually a few rules of this panel discussion. So we will put a question to all of you, and please respond as briefly as can, but not more than 2 minutes. And after that, we will put some other questions which audience or other people may be asking. So our first panelist question goes to our first panelist, Divisha Mohan, researcher.
Our question for you is, how did Ireland and India's relationship develop? How was it sustained?
Hello. Sorry, this is like long, so I'll try to talk about in 2 minutes. But yeah, so basically the question's in two parts, so I'll answer it in two parts. So Ireland and India's relationship, in a sense, began when nationalist links were formed between Irish radical nationalists and Indian radical nationalists, when the respective independence movements were in progress. Historians C.A. Bailey and recently Kate O'Malley have explored the successful formation of ties between nationalists in both countries and how the nationalist agitators engaged with each other and exchanged ideas. The proceedings in Ireland were followed closely by the members of the Constituent Assembly in India, and Ireland was frequently brought up in discussion. De Valera's idea of external association came into practice when India became a republic and joined the Commonwealth. The 1937 Constitution of Ireland had a profound impact on the Constitution of India, and it served as a model. B.R. Ambedkar, the architect of the Indian Constitution, deemed the directive principles embodied in the Irish Constitution worthy of emulation, and how the relationship was sustained. So basically, in the post-war era, sustaining a relationship was extremely challenging because Ireland and India had to transform its relationship from merely having nationalist political links to having a trading relationship. And historian P.G. Fraser contends that Ireland and India would have little in common had it not been for their similar experience of colonial subjugation by Britain. And although there were talks of a also there's a talk of like shared history and a hopeful future by both Indian leaders like Nehru and Irish leaders like De Valera. O'Malley observed that a mutually beneficial trade relationship was all either country had to offer each other, although diplomatic relations were established. In 1949, in 1951, India set up its embassy in Ireland, and in 1964, Ireland set up its embassy in India. So, thank you.
Thank you, Denisha. And our next question goes to John K. Chandy. He's an entrepreneur.
Question for you. Educational ties between Ireland and India go back to the early 19th century, when Irish missionaries set up schools in India. Today, Ireland has become an important destination for Indian students. What advice would you give Indian students considering Ireland for higher studies?
Thank you very much for the question. Good afternoon, Ireland, and good evening, India. Wish you a very happy Republic Day. I'm very thankful to Mr. Prashant Shukla and Mr. Damian for making me a part of this activity. So we are basically supporting people for coming to Ireland for education. Our organization is doing that. And coming to the question, yes, from late 19th century, Ireland has contributed a lot to India as far as education is concerned. I do not know whether many people are aware of Dr. Annie Besant, the founder of Theosophical Society of India, who settled down in Chennai, Adayar. And Dr. Annie Besant from Ireland was a founder member of Banaras Hindu University. I don't know whether many people are aware of this historical fact. She was a socialist who took up a lot of revolutionary activities in India. And the second turning point in the history of India happened Mr. Charlie Flanagan mentioned, the Connaught Rangers, an Irish regiment in Jalandhar, based in Jalandhar, revolted against the Britishers after Ireland became independent, and during that time, it motivated a lot of Indian soldiers and Indian people further to fight for independence and get independence in 1947. And later on, if you look at it, Loreto School in Delhi, St. Columbus School in Delhi, and many institutions strewn around the country. I don't have time to name all of them because of paucity of time. They were started by Irish people, and they are still carrying out the legacy of Irish education in India. That is the background of contribution of Ireland towards Indian education. And the next point I want to cover is the continuous involvement of Irish people within India. Irish backpackers and travelers and business people travel all around India. And I was wonderstruck by the knowledge many of my Irish colleagues have about India. Many of them know more about the remote areas of India than I do. I was in Indian Army. I have traveled all around the country, but I was astonished at the knowledge the people are having about our country. They travel to various interior parts and they study about that. I met the great grandson of the person who translated the first Bible into Tamil. You know, this is the way Ireland is linked with India. And coming to the current scenario, now the change which I am seeing is that a lot of Indian students want to study in Ireland, and they are coming to study in Trinity College, University College, Dublin, UCC, UL, TUD, and all the technological institutes and private colleges in Ireland. Many of them are coming to do research over here, and a lot of workforce is coming to Ireland to join the workforce of this country. And we are acting as a catalyst to, or an interface to, between students and universities. We guide our students to tailor-make their subjects and various courses with the universities. And Indian students are doing an excellent performance in Ireland. And for the future, I am finding that the numbers are increasing, and all the students who are coming here, they do very well. And those who are in the proper subject, that is very important. Those who are in the proper subject, we advise all the students to select the topics and all with a bit of experience. They are establishing here, and they are doing very well. Like Mr. Charles was saying, many students want to stay in Ireland, and India wants them back once they are trained. That is the current trend. The quality of education in Ireland is so good. And once again, I thank you, Mr. Prashant and Mr. Damian and the team of Ireland India Council for organizing this splendid event, which is of very high quality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Mr. Damian Nee, co-chair of IIC. The question for you.
Question is, what is your vision for the future of Indo-Irish relations in a post-Brexit, post-COVID-19 world?
I think it has the capacity to be a pivotal thing in this century, because if you take, unquestionably, Europe is the largest consumer group in the world. And whilst making things matters, increased mechanization, robotization and stuff takes away the role of manual labor and that. But the thing that would be needed more than ever is thinking, thoughts, rational decision-making, and education. And there is no question but that India at the moment is, in my mind, along possibly with Singapore and maybe elements of South Korea, has got the best educational system that takes people from X to a wonderful, not just a technical thing, but a thinking and a philosophizing strain of mind. And vision matters. And I remember going along a street or a little road in the middle of nowhere in the Kerala and the southern tip of India near a place, Tuticorin, I think it is. And there was a little guy sitting at the side of the road with a bookstall, and myself and a pal of mine stopped, and he had the most amazing range of books, you know, What the Don't Teach You in the Harvard Business School and Who Ate My Cheese and all this kind of stuff. And we discovered he was 12. And I said, have you read any of them? Oh, all of them, of course. I would not sell them if I had not read them. And there was Dennis and I, you know, your pal, and we were fascinated that we felt a kid of that age at home might have had comics or football magazines. And that was my absolute confirmation in my mind that India was the nation of the future. And if you take what will matter, it will be people more than everything, because we're now beginning to appreciate people. We need new economic values. It's not how many cars you've got outside or X amount of holidays. It is thanks to technology from India that conferences like this, and you know, it would be lovely to be up in Dublin Castle like we were last year, but in many ways, having it like this is nearly even better, because you can sit here, you can have your coffee, and you can see the homes, the backgrounds, and interact with people, and maybe have people involved that couldn't travel to this kind of stuff. So that, you know, like our little pal years ago said, it's not the strongest who survive or the most intelligent. It's the people best able to adapt when change is needed. And, you know, India is so incredibly good at that. I think the Irish people are great at that. And if you take why we had so many great writers, and I'm finished then, you know, somebody was like, "Is that?" And I said, no, think about it, guys. We didn't have huge, big machines or equipment or infrastructure, but everybody could have a pencil. And India, in many ways, is people who have adapted most and best from having those incredible, what would have been commercial and amazing infrastructures, those temples I saw from 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, the dry docks that were there, the incredible buildings, and then went through a sort of a Gandhi era thing of extreme simplicity. And they're back again at the forefront of the world. And freedom and democracy and civil rights and human rights matter. And I think we just don't appreciate how wonderful India has been at that. And if we can get here and be India's footprint in Europe, in the way we were America's footprint in the 60s and 70s, we can both do very well from it. And I look forward when this changes to, you know, having hugely improved interaction between India and Ireland, and John K. Chandy and what he's doing, because it's bringing people here that matters. And in the 70s, the Germans started a wonderful scheme where they would take 20 or 2 or 3 kids from 70 countries to a location in Germany, and they would all attend second-level school. And one of our friends, Miola Kaneja, was one of the first people on that scheme. One of my daughters took part in it some years ago. And it was with the view that these people would be the leaders of the future. And in many ways, they were correct. And it gave a positive view and understanding of a nation. And I think that John Chandy and ourselves, we can organize, and Jerry Handley, the exchange of maybe even, you know, teenage kids, but we needn't send them on planes anymore, because by choosing schools to twin with other schools and other educational things, and our EcoEd for All project is aimed at kids of 15 to 17 on environmental education, sustainability. And if we can twin schools effectively, where we get to understand the needs of the other thing, people, you know, John Marshall McLuhan's vision of the global village, where what somebody does in one corner of the world affects people in the other. That has really arrived confirmed by the mobility of this virus. So thanks to technology, we can now have people here understand the lifestyle and the needs of people in other corners of the world and work to solve those problems. And that's how you eliminate strife and conflict and terrorism. Okay, so that's a long answer to a short
Thank
question.
you, Damien. Now, our next panelist is Mr. C.M. Patel, advocate.
Question for you. The inclusion of the directive principles in the Indian Constitution has been attributed to the influence of the Irish Constitution. Do you think this has been a positive legacy?
Mr. Patel, please go ahead. I think Mr. Patel, your microphone is off. Oh no.
Mr. Patel, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
तुमने म्यूट कर दिया है to everyone. Mr. Patel, can you hear me? Mr. Patel, can you hear me?
I think Mr. Patel subscribes to that great philosophical point that people should be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Go to the next panelist.
So his microphone is actually
It's down at the bottom of the screen, Mr. Patel.
Yes, Mr. Patel, we can't hear you.
Try the bottom left of the screen.
Till he figure out actually how to connect it, I want to go to our next panelist, Mr. Jerry Hanley.
Question for you. The cultural influence of Ireland in India and vice versa has been an ongoing process. Does intercultural exchange have a positive impact on bilateral relations?
Jerry, you are also mute.
Oh, no.
Yeah, now it is fine.
But not for long.
Can you hear me?
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you very much for the question. And thank you, Mr. Prashant and Mr. Damien, for the privilege of being part of India Republic Day. Yes, I greatly believe in the cultural exchange and the positive influences, because going back to areas that Damien referred to there, you know, the sister city principles, which were started, I think, by Roosevelt after the Second World War, and there's hundreds of cities connected, that where you know people and understand them, you're less likely to see them as a threat, much less likely to go to war and have all sorts of business. So the people word has been used many times there today, especially by Damien, and you know, the connectivity of people, absolutely. And culture is not just the singing or the food, the music. It's about really understanding and being able to place yourself in the shoes of people from another country and get to understand them. And then, of course, the result of that is you see that people are 99% alike. The difference is a very small part of it all. So I hugely believe in that. Where people understand each other, you develop trust. And from what I see and observe, that's the basis for doing business internationally. Where people have trust, they will invest their money. I just, in listening to all the speakers, I feel a great sense of pride. That's the first thing that came across to me. You know, pride in the people that have gone before us, and made all these things possible. The fact that our leaders were in touch with the India leaders back, 70, 50 years, 60, 70 years ago is enormous. And that's coming across to me today. So yes, I believe in the cultural exchanges. I would hope that in the same way that we have parts of the west of Ireland linked with places in Silicon Valley, that we might be likewise able to do something similar with places. Sorry, I'm just trying to connect my power in here now. Yep. That we might be able to do that with places in India over the course of time. I could talk for a very long time. I was amazed. I phoned my daughter last night, who is a lawyer, and because I know very little about the Constitution, her familiarity with the India Constitution. So there's a growing increase in various interactions between Ireland and India, and I just see that expanding exponentially, and hopefully on a cultural basis and a business basis. And thank you again.
It is really wonderful. Mr. Patel, can you hear me? I think still there is a problem with Mr. CM Patel's audio, and we may take his views and record it, and we will put it on our website. So thank you all for this panel discussion. Until you all have a question for yourself to your other panelists.
Just a small little thing, and John Chandy might like this. Here's a little silver item that was given to a member of the Connacht Rangers for a range of things that.
Oh, that is very nice to see. Yes.
And it was some sort of a distant relative of mine way back, and it was given to me when I got involved with started going to India. And
we got a question from Forum Tucker, and that is about Damien and John.
Question for Damien and John K. Chandy from Forum Tucker. What is one thing that you would want to change in the education system of India for John K. Chandy, and Ireland for Mr. Damien? And Forum Tucker says, I would also like to know from Ms. Devisha Mohan's view, as she has studied in India and Ireland.
So, shall I go first, if you permit?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Any child who is placed onto the system of education at the age of 3 or 4 in the play school is supposed to come out as a finished product by the age of 21 as a graduate. That is the system in India which was existing. Now the government has changed the system a little bit. The mindset of the parents are that any student must become a graduate by 21, irrespective of what he or she wants to do in life. That is the problem with the system. And the basic skills of using fingers to create something, or playing with the soil or mud or wood or any material, that is not existing. When my daughter was in school, she is a basketball player. She was wanting 6 girls to form a team in the school. The school had 3,000 students, but it was very difficult to find 6 girls to form a team to play basketball. The girls were saying their skin will be tanned or their nails will break if they play games. This is the dangerous trend which is to be changed. We need people to create things using their hands. A carpenter or an electrician or a plumber. Here in Ireland, I find people, even ladies, do everything from plumbing to tile fixing to all activities to driving a locomotive or a car or a plane. In India also things are changing. I'm not saying that it is not changing. The education system should focus on a primary school where children are made to roll in mud or connect with soil and use their fingers. What differentiates human beings from other animals is the thumb, which can be faced with the other fingers. We can utilize, we can create tools, we can create activities. Our fingers are different. That is why we are ahead of other organisms or animals. We can fight a lion or an elephant with tools which we developed using our fingers. So we should go back to the basics. This is my point.
Thank you, John. And Damien, can you make it actually your brief
Absolutely.
comment and
John
precise?
is
The
so
reason
right.
is actually we are already running very late and
Okay.
our
That's very right. We need a
we
whole
are
new,
getting frustrated.
okay, that's on quick. We need a whole new philosophy of education. It needs to be continuous throughout life. What kid of 17 or 18 knows what they want to do? I still don't, and I'm approaching middle age. I might even get free travel in September. But you need the continuous evolution of education. We need far more screen-based stuff, where, like the MOOCs courses and the free access to free course material from some of the great universities of the world, and our EcoEd for All is the same. And then some form of appreciation or no acknowledgement of what people have learned. And that, when I was a kid, there was this great notion you got a steady, permanent job and you retired from it in 60 years' time. As we're growing up, living longer, life expectancy, forgiving COVID, was going to be going on into the mid-80s. And reinvention is going to be the norm. And we need to facilitate that. And for that to work, we need to get away from that hierarchy of manual labor is not a good thing. You can be thinking whilst you're doing manual labor. And the continuous, I know one wonderful Indian university, a large company, wasn't happy with the quality of the engineers it was getting. So it set up its own engineering university, JP Greens, lovely people. And for the first year, people went out, dug holes for a couple of weeks. Then they drove a digger for a couple of months. Then they did drawings for a couple of months. And then they went out and they did finishing and tiling and all that kind of manual stuff. So that when they went to the engineering school, they had an appreciation of what was feasible, what could be done. And they became so much more effective as engineers that Fluor and some of the large American companies set up recruiting offices there because they got engineers with common sense. Because common sense is something that nobody teaches. Jerry Hanley is a great advocate of common sense and wisdom.
Yes.
And that timing of music and game skills and basketball, you need so many facets, like a beautiful diamond. The more facets you have, the more light that comes in, and the better the future. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Damien. If I could just briefly jump in there, that idea of, and the previous speaker, remembering using our hands, our brains and our hands actually work together, whereas very often the emphasis on education has been just on the academic. Well said, lads.
No.
Hi there. Yes. So hi. I have been privileged enough to have like very supportive parents and who were in the position to educate me. But a lot of Indian children, especially female children, do not have the same opportunities. And yeah, so basically I was educated in Loreto Convent, Lucknow, which was set up by Irish nuns. And then I went and studied history in Delhi. And I've also studied here. So as it's been already pointed out, I feel like, first of all, it's accessibility is a problem. But once you get into a school, most of our education is based on rote learning and very theory-based. And we kind of lack the opportunities to say practically use our knowledge. But yep, and also like with the COVID pandemic, a lot of people like it's you have to have the resources to actually be able to like conduct classes online. Like if someone doesn't have access to the basics, say computer or like technology, they can hardly like continue their education. So yep, I think that's the only aspect of the education system of India I'd be critical of.
Thank you, Devisha. And we still have issues, I think, audio with Mr. Patel. So I want to conclude this session, and we are already delayed more than half an hour for our quiz session.